Hey, welcome to Unstoppable Agents. This is a show where we help real estate agents build their business, build their wealth, and build a life of impact and significance. This show is going to be a great one for that impact and significance piece because I am here with Darryl Baskin from the Baskin Real Estate Specialists. And Darryl, we're just super glad to have you. There's just so much excitement and so much we can learn from you today. So thanks for joining us.
Good to be here. Thanks, Brian.
Yes, so Darryl, I'd love to just jump right in. You have been in business for quite a while, which means you started super early. I'm excited to hear more about your journey. So just tell us, how did you get started and walk us through that to today?
Brian, when I started, I was in my teens and I was working with my dad. He'd been in insurance for a long time and just wanted to have his own financial independence. So I thought I'll get into real estate. So he started working on the investment angle. And of course, back then there wasn't YouTube and we had late night television. Had what I would often term as get rich quick, but it really wasn't that. There was a lot of great information that was from there. So he started listening to these tapes and I was just around him and started to absorb that as a teenager. About 16, I began to be more active in helping him. It certainly wasn't anything official, but I just became comfortable with it. He got cancer and died when I was 18. And my mom, who'd kept this particular job at a university so that I could have free tuition, she lost her job the following year. So my grades were in the toilet. The following semester, I lost my tuition. And so it was just kind of like writing was on the wall. You're not going to finish college. So I thought, what can I do? I can do real estate. So I started looking at investing in real estate. In the process, I decided I need to know what realtors know. That's something official. I should educate myself. Got into that. And as I was going to class, and those were all in person, of course, at this time, this was the late 80s, I realized if these people can make a living doing this, I could be a millionaire. And of course, that's a young person talking. And I realized it was a lot more difficult than what I thought it would be, but I also wasn't wrong. And I realized there was this huge gap between 20 somethings and everybody in the real estate business was over 50 back then. So I had a really great career. Within the first year, I had 11 sales, all pending at one time, which didn't mean I had long closing dates. I just had this huge influx of business once I figured out how things worked. And then I got into this issue of I didn't have enough credibility. I would go on appointments and I did lose a lot of business because people just thought I was a kid and how can he know anything, especially when they're comparing you to their own children who are still goofing off in college. And I decided I needed credibility. So I started television. Some notable names today actually helped me out and said they were doing TV at the time. I called mine not officially, unofficially, it was Wayne's World of Real Estate because that was like producing this television show in your basement. But it established me as somebody who knew what they were doing. And of course, nobody else was on TV. And that kind of launched my career. It takes you up to my early 20s.
I just love that story. And there's so much there to dive into. So I'm somebody who I've got 3 boys. And my oldest is heading into his 3rd year of college. One just graduated from high school. And then I've got a sophomore. And so what I love about that is just I'm trying to instill the entrepreneurial mindset into my kids. So college is great. College is not for everyone. And with or without college, you've got the ability to earn an income and build your own business. I'm fascinated that you got that start and really so long ago, because that was way ahead of the curve and way ahead of this gig economy that we're in now. That was way out in front.
I do say God has influence in our lives in so many ways that we don't often recognize. And that was it for me. I would be really miserable as an engineer today. That's what I was studying. It's been a real asset to my business because I looked at things in a detailed, systematic way that gave me a leg up on all of my competition when I was getting started. And it's been good for me to usher into this high tech because that's just the way I think. But if I'd finished school as an engineer, who knows what I'd be doing, and it'd be awful. The world would not be a very nice place.
There'd probably be some terrible bridges or engineering stuff engineered.
That's right. A frustrated designer or an engineer that messed it all up.
That's awesome. So that kind of got you into this publishing or broadcasting path. So you've got a radio show now. We'd love you to feel free to plug that, and we can include a link to that in the description. But tell me more about your broadcasting and what role that's played for you.
So I did television from 93 to 2012. Much of that was a live broadcast. It was to my knowledge, it was the longest live broadcasted program aside from the evening news. And it really became something that in the beginning was a little hokey. It was like, you're trying to do stuff and I'm learning, but I started to get a little bit better about it. And people also started to respond differently. And this was something I wasn't really setting out to do this, but I started to just establish this network of people that I was learning each time I did a program. And so I was learning from each of the people I was interviewing. I was learning about my community. I was establishing some credibility. It wasn't all real estate. So I was talking about things that were helping nonprofits and organizations that then later said, it's a soft sell in that people don't need your product or service until they do. And when they do, they think, oh, there's that guy that I got to know 3 years ago through something that had nothing to do with real estate. And so it's what it does is it establishes a level of trust. And I think that's what my big mission has been lately, is that when I get new agents that are calling me, what do I need to do? What do I need to do? And I said, well, first of all, be careful of the bling, because there's all this stuff being sold to us of buy these leads and use this gadget and all of these things. None of that is necessarily by itself bad or inherently bad. It's just that that's not the basis of what real estate transactions are. The real estate transactions are based on trust. And we go out, you wonder, if you've been in the business a while, you can wonder, why did I just lose this business to some friend they had? We have to break down the levels of trust. And Stephen Covey has a really good book on the speed of trust. And he talks about two different kinds in particular. And one of those is the integrity type of trust, or you have a friend or a relationship and you trust them. They're not that they would intentionally be dishonest with you, but there's also the competency trust. And as realtors, we're so set on getting our license so that we can just get a bunch of commission that we are forgetting about establishing the competency and really learning our craft and how it plays out, how it affects people's lives. Right. And when we really do that, the public senses that authenticity. And then we establish both of those trusts. And most of us are trustworthy. And then having the competency puts you leagues ahead of everyone else.
And you're coming from contribution, right? So you've got this TV show, which when you're talking about nonprofits, you're talking about other businesses, and you're sharing their expertise, what they do. You're really giving them a platform to grow their business. And then that rubs off by proxy. So anybody who sees that sees you building somebody else up and has a chance to like you. Meanwhile, you're building a relationship with somebody else. That's a double dip. You also mentioned new agents, and I think this is terrific. If you look at the 49ers and the gold rush, the people who got rich during the gold rush were the people selling the shovels. They were selling the picks and the shovels and the meals and all that stuff. It wasn't all about the miners and everybody rushing out. So over the last couple of years, what's happened is during this big real estate boom, there's so many people looking to get in and get into the business. Well, it's the folks selling leads and selling tools and selling all of the shiny objects that, again, none of those are necessarily bad as long as you follow through on any of the programs. And there are a lot of just building relationships, serving, working with your sphere is a better long-term way to build your business. So I love that.
You hit on something that is important to me. And that is, so I grew up as a preacher's kid. My dad's profession up until I was about 14, he was a minister. And so it taught me a lot about different cycles of life, and it would be death and divorce to babies and weddings and all of these different things that people go through. The death part of it, I don't like to be too down when I'm talking. It's depressing to a lot of people, but it's a fact of our life cycle, is that we're all going to die. And when you've experienced that early, and I did with my dad, and not just with him personally, but also with people that I would know from church, and then one day they're there and the next day they're not. It gave me a different viewpoint on what the purpose of our business is, why we're here to serve. And you talk about contribution. And I think fundamentally, if we can have that sort of view built into everything that we do, it becomes less about selling and what are you contributing. And as you're making that contribution, people want to buy from you. They want to contribute to you and your life. Very few will do you wrong in those circumstances. Of course, it feels bad when they do, but you just look at how much blessing there is. And then you're not having to deal with how am I going to trick people into becoming my customer? And that's what much of the gimmicky stuff is based on today. As an underlying message, just really focus on that contribution. I like the way you stated it.
Yeah, I love that. Rolling forward a little bit, you talked about your TV show up until 2012. Something else major happened in 2012, and you opened up Oklahoma for EXP. So tell me about that. That was a big decision at that point. Honestly, it was a big risk, and tell us, and big reward hopefully for that as well. So just tell us about that decision and that journey.
If you look back on the cycles of the real estate business, of course, when I started, the fax machine was still new. And pagers were becoming, that was the thing. If you're really important, if you had a pager. And then the cell phone was, I think my first one was $1.25 a minute. And I carried it around so that people knew I could talk on it, but I never talked on it because it was so expensive. And all of these things, I just watched them have an impact on our business. And as we were approaching 2012, I began to have this very uncomfortable feeling. I would sit in meetings and there would, for example, one of the meetings that really just made my head explode is Zillow was giving us this pitch on how they were here to help and they were just going to make business better and whatever. And they were selling us leads. You can buy these territories, et cetera. And one of the explanations was this young guy, slicked back, looked great on the stage. And he said, we were founded by the same people, and it was Expedia or something. One of the things, and it's like the first thing, that alarm bells are going off. Yes, and you put travel agents out of business overnight, and now you have all these sheep right here in seats in front of you, ready to write you checks. And I left that room, I was just so disgusted. I'm like, people, we have the relationship, and fine, let Zillow be. Let them do whatever they're going to do, but I'm not going to fund it. And you're standing in line. You can't wait to write them checks. And I just got really disgusted at that point because we had this old business model. People were thinking the service I provide is we used to have the MLS books. Now I'm jumping on discussion here for a minute. We used to have the MLS book. Well, you had to come to me as the realtor to find out what was in the MLS book. And so there's this evolution that now the internet's here and we no longer control the data. So we have to level up on our service and what are we bringing to the table that is worth the amount of money we're charging. You can make the money as long as you're bringing an experience and a service that justifies it. And so with all of this change taking place, and that's just a little bit of it. I mean, the iPad was new a few years before, and we were learning that you could do this electronically. So we had to become more efficient. I saw this issue coming that the old-fashioned real estate model, business model, was really just going to sink me because I couldn't stay nimble enough to be efficient to bring to my client, my customer, the level of service that I needed to bring in order to stay relevant in the marketplace. So as that was happening, I was almost reaching this state of depression. This is the crazy story. January 2012, I go to this high-tech meeting, high-tech mastermind with agents, and I'm already having these feelings like, something big's going to happen. This guy presents EXP to me. And I remember looking at it in January 2012, and I was like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever seen. And I walked away, and of course I was nice to him, and he was a friend of mine. I was like, I don't see it. I just don't see it. 2 months later, and this is almost 2 months to the day, I woke up 2:00 in the morning, and my brain had just processed and thought, Darryl, all of these things that are making you uncomfortable and like things are changing in the market, et cetera, EXP is the answer to that. You just didn't recognize it because it had never existed in my world before. And so I called him right up and I said, I get it now. I understand what you were saying. And this solves a lot of the dilemma because I didn't want to own my own company and have all the servicing that I had to do behind that. I needed something that actually worked for me to make it possible for me to deliver to my consumer. So that was the beginning. And I said, I'll do whatever I need to do. Let's open up Oklahoma.
That's awesome. It is one of those things that maybe you don't see it immediately, but once you see it and you process it, you almost, when you really go through the entire model, can't walk away from it. And that,
well, Brian, what I have to add, the reason I like to insert that is here I am, often by my friends called a visionary of seeing things well into the future, and I couldn't see it. So if I can't see it or couldn't see it at the time, I have to be really patient with others when I'm talking to them and just slowly let them understand the process, because when it was first shown to me, it was too much, too fast. And so developing the relationship where people are open to that, because this is scary. It was really scary. People thought I had lost my mind. When I sold out of the state's largest, I was one of the 5 owners of the state's largest independent brokerage. And to sell out of that and go do something else, people who cared about me, truly, they would call and say, are you all right? Are you sure you're doing the right thing? And of course, the rest is history.
What's interesting, I think so often when we're working with buy and sell clients, we build and nurture relationships over the long term and know that when the time is right for them, that they'll call us. If we stayed in a relationship, we've had enough value, then they'll call us when they're ready to make a change. It's not that different when people are making a brokerage decision. If we're spending time with them, pouring into them, adding value, developing the career, developing a relationship, this is an industry where people make a lot of changes. And if and when they do, they'll at least call and ask and say, hey, let's revisit that, or I've got some questions. Can you help me?
Put yourself in a position to have permission to speak to people about that. And often we drive them away. I have a funny example of it. We treat it like dating, and just imagine you were at the bar somewhere and somebody that's just really, get away from me. You're coming on too strong. And the other is slowly building the relationship and having someone feel comfortable with you being in their space.
Yeah, that's actually a great analogy. Plenty of people trying to shack up. The meeting at the bar versus building something long-term and valuable for everybody.
Yeah.
That's great. So we're actually, how we got connected is you recently won what we call an Icon Award. So that's really the top recognition that you can get at EXP. Congratulations, both on the award and the financial benefits of that. It's pretty great to be in a situation where you get what you paid into the company back in stock and ownership of the company.
Yeah, definitely. It's one of the things that's so unique to what we do at EXP. And I was talking to someone who's relatively new with EXP, is an extremely high producer from another company. And one of the things she said when we just were continuing conversation off platform of sorts, she said, Darryl, it's just so refreshing to be at a company that celebrates its top producers, but we don't sit around and just talk about, I did a gazillion million, whatever, just the craziness of keeping up with this superficial existence. There's a lot of, I'm a top producer, I'm good at what I do, but the culture and the community that's created within the Icon system has been continually impressing me and impressing others, because I don't remember the last time anybody asked me my production level. It's enough to do Icon, and I don't actually even know what that is, to be honest with you. I just know I go to work and I sell and I take care of people, and I get these messages that say I'm an icon. Well, that's great. And there's not like the level of icon. And I hope I'm getting my point across. It's that we're all pushing each other to become our best and then sharing within the company. And that's the brilliance of the business model that Glenn created here. Is I have direct incentive to do something for other people at the company instead of being the silo of information that is so prevalent everywhere else.
Yeah, it's not competitive. So even within your own market, you're not thinking, okay, I'm not going to help this person because they're a competitor. It's, well, we're all owners in the company. So if they win, we all win. And we've got this collaborative culture and community. It really is awesome. And I mean, which is why we're here. So I appreciate you jumping on here. I've got just two more questions for you. And one, I want to go back to your early days, because you said something in that relatively quickly, you had 11 pendings. And what I love about that is just being dumb and not knowing what we don't know is sometimes one of the best gifts. And you shouldn't have been able to get 11 pending. The world would tell you that's not possible, but you didn't know any better and you needed to, so you went out and did it. How did you go do that? Whether it's a mindset or what were the activities that you did to go drive that kind of activity out of the gate?
I identified, I don't know if you saw my face light up when you said we're just dumb and don't know any better. And I was like, that's me, that is me. And I had this book called How to List and Sell Real Estate in the 90s by Danielle Kennedy. And I think she's still around and she's updated it. Some of the other basics, the primers, What to Say When You Talk to Yourself by Shad Helmstetter, and some other business books that I got into these scripts. And everyone else, all the older folks were saying, oh, that's just not me, or I don't use scripts. But we use scripts. We even have scripts that we're saying to ourselves. That's what do you say when you talk to yourself. And I just read them and I would practice, and it was natural. I wouldn't just read them to people and say, it says I'm supposed to say. Just internalizing them and telling people the things that they needed to hear. We have a role, and I didn't know this back then. I didn't understand what was happening, but we have a role in our business and we have an identity as who we are as individuals. I may not talk that way in my normal daily activities, but when I step into a role to advise someone on their financial decisions of buying and selling a home and making these decisions, I need to take on that role. Otherwise, I'm not doing a good professional job because I'm not delivering the information they need. So I learned these scripts and just started using them. And when people would give some sort of objection, or I understood they're not objecting to me, they're raising a concern they have here. So I was responding to that in a way that helped them move closer, or in some cases move further away from what it was they were doing. But in the end, they had a better experience, and I still sold them a house. It was just a different house. And so taking those scripts and internalizing them as scripts and dialogues are so important. And that book, How to List and Sell Real Estate in the 90s, talked about farming, and we can still do this today. But back then it was a geographic farm. And I literally walked the 332 houses that were in my neighborhood, giving them a newsletter, always being relevant, never selling them anything. Just, hey, it's my newsletter this week. This is what's going on in the neighborhood. And eventually, when they needed something, they knew there was this non-threatening guy that would, actually kid is what they would call me, that would walk around, and I had demonstrated that I knew my stuff. And so those things started to really pay off. So there's the short term and then the long term. And hustling and being available in the very beginning is what really laid the groundwork.
It's funny you talk about that, because so many people will say that, well, door knocking doesn't work today. Post-COVID, whatever, insert excuse here. And Edward Jones, the financial advising company, their entire business model is built around kids right out of college, go and door knock until you've got enough business. Period, the end. That's the way they go build their business. It's not my strategy. It may not be your strategy anymore, but there are so many different ways. Literally almost anything works as long as you're committed to it, you're consistent, and you develop your craft.
And Danielle's strategy was creating opportunities to be in front of people, essentially. Whether that's being involved in your homeowners association, volunteering somewhere where people are seeing you and they're becoming comfortable with you. They need to, back to this dating example, if we don't feel safe in someone's presence, that can be many different things. It can be physical safety, but it can also just be, I don't want to bring up real estate, because my last few encounters with real estate agents is you bring it up and then who's your realtor? Can I sell your house? And they won't leave you alone. It just ruins the whole relationship. But if they feel safe with you, then they know that they can start exploring other parts of conversation. And that's the beginning of establishing that comfort level and trust.
It's great. You saw things way ahead in joining you. You do have this visionary ability to see ahead of the game, so to speak. What would you share with folks about what do you see coming in the market, and how would you tell people to prepare?
So I really talk a lot about where I don't think we've even begun to understand what is going to happen with the EXP model. I don't think we at EXP fully understand how things are going to happen. I talk about the current state, or the current pieces of the puzzle, being like the Industrial Revolution times 10. And here we are at a company where we are owned individually. We have owned as a single company, pardon me. We don't have franchises, non-franchised. And so we're one company, and we have the ability to work across state lines, across the world, in a way that we never have before. I don't have to call somebody else and negotiate outside of my company. We all have the same platform. And as we're doing this, and as the world is getting smaller, we can travel more today. We have technology that connects us just like this in a way that we never have before. So we have a wider net. I think we're going to become more and more specialized. That's why I changed the name of my group a number of years ago from the Baskin team to the Baskin Real Estate Specialists. And because we can work in these larger areas and there's so much more knowledge for us to gain and really be experts, it takes more knowledge to be an expert at something now, in my opinion, that the public is going to be searching us out for that knowledge. And just being a generalist and, okay, I can show you some houses, that's going to be more of a commodity. And though the public can replace that individual. So we've developed a specialist, the CDPE for distressed property. That I think is going to come back. I'm a court-appointed certified divorce real estate expert. So when people are getting divorced, they know they have somebody who can actually walk them through that very contentious process. And a land planner and senior housing and downsizing, all of those things require a particular skill. And I say, sign up for those, understand it, and become a real expert at it, and you'll outshine everyone else in the market.
And I think in marketing, Marketing 101 is to niche down. And if you're targeting everyone, then you miss everyone. Yeah. Because nobody really understands what you stand for. But if you can get specific in certain areas, then a really small piece of, or a good piece of a small market ends up being a lot of business. So that's smart. It's a great approach. Darryl, thank you. This was terrific. Super. There was so much wisdom and value in this conversation. I appreciate you. Any parting thoughts or anything you'd like to share on the way out?
I don't know. I would have to, this first thing that comes to mind is how much after 10 years, celebrating 10 years at EXP personally, every day is even more encouraging with what we're creating here, and to be associated with the tens of thousands of agents who are contributing to that is really amazing. And I just have to say thanks to everyone who's helped us build this revolutionary company from the very beginning with Glenn to the last person who just joined with us to help pull the rope.
I can't agree with you more. I love the collaborative spirit and really top down the way our leaders are still listening and still looking to innovate through others. It's not, hey, look how brilliant they are, but look how collaborative we are. I like this idea of open wins. And when we all work together, the collective is better than the individual. Our company just keeps getting better and better.
Yeah, given a space to shine. Thank you all.
That's right. So Darryl, we'll include, so if anybody wants to reach out to you, we'll include links for them to reach you in the description. And again, thanks for joining us.
Good to be here.